welcome to another edition of PorA. I am your host, David Russell, and I'm actually joined with my co-host, Caleb Jackson. What's up, Caleb?
What's up, David? Apparently my camera just stopped working, so as I'm figuring that out anyway, we will continue to host this. So yes, thank you to everyone for watching, and then apologize for moving the time forward, but yeah, thanks for everyone for viewing it. So today we have a debate / discussion, which I'm sure will go well with Travis and Seamus. So yeah, Travis, I know that they already know you, but if you just want to give a brief introduction as far as what you hope you'll cover today, and then Seamus can go.
Sure. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. So what I'm going to be doing is presenting the RTB, Reasons to Believe Testable Creation Model, and we're going to be viewing it through a lens of principles from the philosophy of science and see if we can kind of look at, an inference to the best explanation over certain data points.
Right on. And now we got the free thought prophet. Seamus, what's up, man? Why don't you introduce yourself? We don't know you yet, and you're new to the show, so a big warm welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. So I'm Seamus, one of the hosts of the Free Thought Prophet. I do the show with John Hamill, who is from Ireland. I'm here from, of course, America, the U.S. Yay! Land of the free, home of the brave. Did we lose somebody? Or are we going on?
Yeah, briefly. He's probably fixing his camera. It's all right.
I think his camera needs a little fine tuning.
I
had to say that.
So the show we do has kind of been dubbed the pub philosophy kind of thing. We talk with people all over the secular world, as also folks on the other side of the fence. We also talk about other things in history. We try to do what we call a bit of our latest episodes, where one of us, and in this case it's me, bringing up a story that happened in the past, and just having some fun with the folks that are on, including John and a couple of our usual cohorts, and just surprising them with some wild, crazy tales. So the latest one we did was the maniacal Mormon. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that story. Joyce,
no.
She was an obsessed beauty queen who became obsessed with the Mormons, particularly a particular Mormon man, and basically hunted him down. I'll not give away all the stories, but it ended up being a international scandal back in the 70s. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, the church isn't beyond scandals, that's for sure. It seems like something's hitting every month now. So, but anyways, yes. How does that work for you, Seamus? Your co-host is in Ireland, man. How do you schedule shows?
We finally figured out the time zone again. Me arguing or doing some sort of cosmological debate is going to be fun anyways. Like I warned you guys, I'm just a dumb pub philosopher. So, I did. Despite not being a mathematician, look at the hairdo. I was able to figure out time zones, and we have been able to schedule shows. But
that's cool, man. So, guys, that is the Free Thought Prophet. Go check his channel out. Give him a subscribe. Maybe you'll be challenged in your thoughts. And So, how we're going to do this is we're just going to give you guys roughly about 15 minutes each to open the debate floor with opening statements, and then you guys can go into your own informal kind of dialogue. Travis has a lot for you, Seamus, so you're going to be able to just like question away, and this channel is like home for all of us, like even our atheist guests and stuff like that. So feel at home. Don't feel like you have to step on any eggshells. So you hit us with a hard question, we're all game, man. So so I'm gonna kick it over to you, Travis, so that you can start your opening statements.
All right, sounds wonderful. Okay, so let me bring this up. Okay, so what I'd like to do is present the RTB testable creation model while using principles from the philosophy of science, and see if we can look at this in a more illuminating and testable way that will help us form an inference to the best explanation. Now, the fine-tuning data suggests that the universe may have been designed not just for any kind of life, but for embodied moral agents in particular. This idea can be more rigorously tested and established through more detailed comparisons of the fine-tuning required for the support of the following life forms. 1. Simple life such as unicellular life that survives for 90 days or less. 2, permanent simple life, such as unicellular life that persists for 3 billion years or longer. 3, advanced biological life, including the equivalent of Homo sapiens. 4, intelligent, consciously self-aware, embodied moral agents capable of launching and sustaining a high-tech global civilization in which morally significant decisions can be made in a moral theater. If the fine-tuning differences dramatically increase with the complexity of successive categories, and if the fine-tuning required for the 4th category is extreme at all levels of cosmic structure, laws of physics, universe as a whole, cluster of galaxies, planetary system, planet, moon, surface of the planet, and life on the planet's surface, then it's reasonable to conclude that the universe exists for a specific purpose, especially if this conclusion can be put to an additional test by determining the comparative degree to which evidence for the fine-tuning demands of the 4th category increases in relation to the others, and can demonstrate that any alleged hostility of conditions in the universe are in fact used in the production of the 4th category. Now then, to go through the data. So there are 140 fine-tuned parameters that are necessary for a life-permitting universe, such as the precision in the fundamental forces that produce heavy elements, things like, the mass density of the universe that's necessary for heavy elements to build up life chemistry, and controls the precise expansion rate that allows stars, planets, and galaxies to form. We need the precise degree of the strong nuclear force constant for the formation of hydrogen and allowing any elements other than hydrogen to be able to form. The gravitational force constant must be precise, or stars would be too hot and burn up too quickly and too unevenly, or in the reverse, they will remain so cool that nuclear fission would never ignite. And of course, that would lead to, no heavy elements or, life chemistry being produced. So we need the precise degree of the electromagnetic force constant for sufficient chemical bonding to even be possible. We need the precise ratio of electron to proton mass for sufficient chemical bonding of stable molecules to be possible, and on and on. So these 140 fine-tuned parameters that are necessary for a life-permitting universe are fairly well established. And so what I'd like to do is focus in on something a little more interesting, and that's how this precision keeps growing. So when we look at the cluster of galaxies, with the precision already required with the 140 fine-tuned parameters, we see increasing precision, and that we need to have the precise galaxy type for sufficient infusion of gas to sustain star formation for long enough periods of time, as well as preventing galaxy collisions and mergers from disrupting solar orbit. We need the precise galaxy mass, the precise galaxy type that has to have the just right elliptical precision for star formation and efficient heavy element buildup that's necessary for life chemistry, as well as preventing extreme radiation exposure. We need the proximity of solar nebula to a supernova eruption for sufficient heavy element absorption, as well as preventing nebulas from being blown apart. The number of stars in the parent star birth aggregate are necessary for sufficient input of certain heavy elements into the solar nebula, and preventing planetary orbits from being disturbed, and even things like the star formation history in the parent star vicinity is necessary, which, had it been too soon, planet formation and planet orbits would be too radically disturbed for life. We need things like the parent star color, which, if it had been more red or blue, then photosynthetic responses would be insufficient. And of course, the list of the fine-tuning for the cluster of galaxies goes on and on. But in our own solar system, of course, we have things like Jupiter that helps prevent asteroid collisions. We have to be the exact proximity to the sun. And of course, the list goes on and on with the specific, conditions of the solar system. But what I'd kind of like to do is focus in on the planetary collision with Thela that formed our moon 4.5 billion years ago. And so this crash replaced Earth's thick atmosphere with one that was thin enough for light to pass through. This new atmosphere had the just right chemical composition to foster life's existence. I mean, it boosted the mass and density of the Earth just enough to allow the gravity to retain a large, but actually not too large, quantity of water vapor for billions of years, and raised the amount of iron in Earth's core closer to the level needed to provide the Earth with a strong and enduring magnetic field, which of course shields life from deadly cosmic rays and solar X-rays. It delivered to Earth's core and mantle quantities of iron and other associated elements in the just right ratios to produce long-lasting plate tectonics that, of course, build up continents. These plate tectonics also perform a crucial role in compensating for the sun's increasing luminosity so that life can be sustained on Earth for billions of years. It raised the iron content of Earth's crust in a way that permits a huge abundance of ocean life that in turn supports advanced land life. It played a major role in salting Earth's interior with an abundance of long-lasting radioisotopes. I mean, the heat from which drives most of Earth's tectonic activity and volcanism. It slowed the Earth's rotation rate so that a wide variety of lower life forms could survive long enough to provide the resources needed for the existence of advanced life forms. This slowing is also significant to advanced life that can't survive the high wind velocities of a more rapid rotation rate. So this stabilized the tilt of Earth's rotation axis, which protected the planet from rapid and extreme climatic variations. Each of these conditions altered Earth to make conditions far more favorable for living creatures. And of course, there's also things like, the late heavy bombardment period, the faint sun paradox, and so forth. But to focus in a little bit on the planet's surface, so when we look at the greenhouse gas removal, okay, in the erosion process, we have water from rain, streams, and mist that catalyzes the chemical reaction between silicates and atmospheric carbon dioxide. The end products are carbonates and silicon dioxide, and to get the necessary amount of exposed silicates, plate tectonics have to build up islands and continents. The rate of silicate erosion depends on the Earth's rotation rate, the average global rainfall, average global temperature, the chemical composition of Earth's atmosphere, the total area of Earth's land masses, the average slope of Earth's land masses, and the quantities and types of plants on the land. So, we're going to have organisms like photosynthetic plants, bacteria, and methanogens that take carbon dioxide, water, and methane from the atmosphere and chemically transform them into sugars, starches, fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Now, if these get buried before they decay or get eaten by other organisms who then get buried before they decay, we get greenhouse gases converted into biodeposits through physical and chemical processes operating in the Earth's crust. The end products of this greenhouse gas removal are going to be things like coal, oil, natural gas, limestone, marble, phosphates, sand, all of which are necessary for launching and sustaining a high-tech global civilization. So without billions of years of greenhouse gas removal from the Earth's atmosphere and the conversion of these gases into biodeposits, human civilization would never have taken off and achieved its current level of technology. And just briefly, we have things like functioning ecosystems of predator to prey relationships, parasites, so you think of like symbiosis, symbiotic relationships. Things like the surface gravity are necessary to regulate the amount of ammonia and methane and prevent the planet from losing too much water. We have the precise carbon dioxide level for plants to maintain efficient photosynthesis. The precise water vapor level in the atmosphere to regulate precipitation on the land. The precise atmospheric conditions. For example, if the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere were any less, then plants would be unable to maintain efficient photosynthesis. And if our water vapor level in the atmosphere were any greater, we'd have runaway greenhouse effect developing. So if the atmospheric electric charge rate were any less, then we'd have too little nitrogen fixed in the atmosphere. Likewise, with the ozone level in the atmosphere, it regulates our surface temperature. I mean, there's even simple things like the amount of leaf litter on the ground helps soil nitration. We have epochs in history like the Triassic and Jurassic periods that lay down the fossil fuels that intelligent agents would evolve to use in manufacturing a high-tech global civilization. Not to mention the quantity of like the tallest trees will go into, supporting lumber for a high-tech global civilization. And of course, the list goes on and on for how everything is precise for embodied conscious moral agents to manufacture a high-tech global civilization. Now, to continue with the argument, so we see the increasing precision that it takes to go from things like just a life-permitting universe to one with a planet that can support primitive life, to more advanced life, to complex life, to embodied moral agents who can manufacture a global civilization to make morally significant decisions. which also gives us a sort of testing measure by examining the increasing precision with each category. For example, it takes a lot more precision for the evolution of intelligent moral agents than it does for the things like the formation of supernovas and black holes. So with this, I think we can see intelligence, intentionality, and immense power informing a moral theater. This is what I would expect to find if there's a necessary rational mind that grounds and unifies all facts of reality, such as these: physics and fine-tuning, universal applicability of mathematics, objective or moral knowledge, principles of reason, states of consciousness, and so forth, that are all emergent from the mind of God. Theism is a rival hypothesis to naturalism to explain these sets of facts, keeping in mind that it's not the universe plus God, it's all of reality that is deducible in substance to the mind of God. Therefore, God is not constrained within these laws of physics and narrow conditions. In fact, theism postulates God created the very laws of physics and narrow conditions in the first place. So we get narrow conditions as a byproduct of God's intentionality to bring about embodied moral agents in a moral theater. It's this intentionality which gives us explanatory power, as well as other theoretical virtues such as evidential accuracy. Theism fits the described facts well. Causal adequacy. Theism's causal factors plausibly produce the evidence in need of explanation and covers a wide explanatory depth. Coherential virtues such as internal consistency. Theism's components for explaining are not contradictory. Internal coherence. Theism lacks theoretical components tacked on merely to solve isolated problems. Universal coherence. Theism is not obviously contradictory to other warranted beliefs. Aesthetic virtues. Theism invokes an aesthetic pleasure in a beautifully ordered cosmos. Simplicity and unification. Theism, especially theistic idealism, explains more facts as rivals with the same amount of theoretical content. In other words, it's going to posit less brute facts. Even virtues such as fruitfulness. Because under theism, an intentionality for embodied moral agents would be an expected matter of course that was advocated prior to the fine-tuning evidence, which can now be independently measured through the increasing teleological precision of successive categories 1 through 4. As Richard Swinburne states on his paper on the prior probabilities in the argument from fine-tuning, quote, theism is a far simpler hypothesis, and so a priori more probably true than naturalism, understood as the hypothesis that the existence of this law-governing universe has no explanation. Theism postulates only one entity, God, with very simple properties, whereas naturalism has to postulate either innumerable entities all having the same properties, or one very complicated entity with the power to produce the former. If theism is true, it is moderately probable that God would create human beings, and so human bodies. But laws of nature would have to have very special properties if they are to bring about the existence of human bodies. Given laws of the present form, like quantum theory with the PorA principle and the four forces, the constants of the laws and the variables of the boundary conditions of the universe, they would need to be extremely fine-tuned, and no simpler set of laws would allow the existence of human bodies at all. So the evidence of the existence of human bodies adds further to the probability of theism over naturalism, end quote. So just to present the argument real quick, it would go, the increasing ratio of fine-tuning required for categories 1 through 4 exists. Theism would explain the data. Theism would offer the best explanation, so we have abductively plausible reason to hold theism is true. And with that, I will turn it over.
Right on. Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to get it off.
You were only about 4 seconds over, so I let it go there. Caleb, I'm going to give it over to you, buddy. You can.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. So, Seamus, would you like to go next with your opening statement?
A lot of things to address, but I'll try to just get through what I was planning on talking about, and we can go from there, I guess. So again, apologies. Again, I am just a pub philosopher, and as we were talking in the green room, if you will, I too am also suffering from a bit of a cold or a flu bug. So if my voice goes at times, I apologize ahead of time. So. But I'll try to go through here. So when I hear the arguments for the fine-tuned universe, I can't help but think of the story of the sentient puddle The story was coined by writer Douglas Adams. Quote, if you imagine a puddle waking up one morning and thinking, this is an interesting world I find myself in, an interesting hole I find myself in, fits me rather neatly, doesn't it? In fact, it fits me staggeringly well. Must have been made to have me in it. I can't help but think that this is very much the same model that theists look at whenever they consider the cosmos and all that is. In general, yes, what Travis was saying, a lot of the different complexities that all the universe appears to have constants that need to be within a very precise range, such that even slight variations could result in a very different universe. There is no alternative existence in nature that we know of in which nature would have different constants, and we've never measured any alternatives to these constants, then truly we cannot even say that it is impossible because probability indicates how likely in an event it is to occur. This would presume that more than one event could occur when it comes to the universe and constants. We would need to assume that other universes with other constants were possible. We don't know whether that is the case, and if it is the case, the other universes with other constants could occur. Then there could be an infinite number of universes with all kinds of combinations of constants. Problem here is the statistics can't be done with one simple sample. There are lots of things that can be statically improbable or impossible, such as the chances of flipping a coin, rolling a dice. It can be calculated by someone smarter than me that the probability of getting heads or tails or a number of times with the dice are both possible. We could determine the probability of each result. No probability has been based on statistics can be calculated for the different constants of nature. Just like the puddle, who only knows about one hole, we only know about one universe. The puddle can't know what other shapes of a hole are possible. We don't know what other kinds of life are possible. To say otherwise is just making speculation and assumptions. So, yes, it appears to be amazing that when we look at the numbers and claim that the odds are against us and being here, which I must respond to, it comes to an argument of fine tuning. So what? The data, it's impressive, I know, but the data we have claims that these are natural events does not equal to supernatural cause. Claiming that A occurred doesn't mean that it must be a result of X. This comes down to a more unsubstantial claims and leaps over logic to fit dogmatic conclusions. Uh, I will end this by further challenging by asking if the universe is not finely tuned, what would a universe that is not tuned look like? I'll yield my time.
You're Caleb, muted. You're muted.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, so are we ready for like the conversation?
Yeah, yes. We're moving in the conversation area.
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So what I'd like to do is I'm gonna just address each critique to the fine tuning that's made, the puddle, the issue of sample size, and what was the third objection? Can you repeat that?
Seamus? I'm trying to think here. One more time. So the puddle.
Okay, so you did the puddle objection.
Mm-hmm.
You did the issue of the sample size objection, and I think there was one more like how do we know it's theism? Okay, all right. So to start off with the puddle analogy, the issue with that is so let's kind of steelman this. When we look at the weak anthropic principle, there's something known as an observational selection effect, and so that's roughly this idea that okay, so these conditions have to be right for organisms like us to be here, right? Well, the fact that I'm observing the cosmos would show that yes, the conditions are met. So of course, and everything, and so this idea with an observational selection effect of the weak anthropic principle, no proponent of fine tuning would deny that. Of course, we have an observational selection effect, but that gives us no explanatory reasoning for why it should be the case. So I mean, so it really, the puddle analogy, it doesn't really tell us anything interesting. We're looking at explanations, and so it gives us no explanatory power. And so hypothesis with explanatory power is going to have a theoretical gain in that aspect. And then with this idea of sample size, like we don't have other universes to compare that it's fine tuning. Well, you'll notice that's not really the argument that I'm going with. I'm going with the increasing teleological precision of successive categories 1 through 4. So we very much do have a testability here and a sample size of condition 1, which is like unicellular life that survives for 90 days or less. And then more precision is needed for permanent simple life. Think of like a bacteria that grows in oceans and can survive for up to 3 billion years. Well, it keeps further growing when we get into biological complexity and let's say the equivalent of Homo sapiens. And then it's even further complexity is the intelligent, conscious agents develop that have, can and have the intelligence and the capacity to understand the cosmos, to take the biodeposits that have built up over the last 4.1 to 3.8 billion years and everything, and manufacture a global civilization to make morally significant decisions. And finally, with this idea of, natural claims don't prove supernatural. Well, what I'm doing is these are grand competing theories of ultimate reality. So we have something akin to theism and metaphysical naturalism. And so what I'm doing is I'm applying the principles from the philosophy of science to make an inference to the best explanation based on the criteria of theoretical virtues. So I'm not just invoking the supernatural. I'm looking at this data and I'm saying, making an inference to the best explanation on how to explain it. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, well, I mean, the puddle analogy is still where we ultimately are if we're going to conclude that the universe has been made for us. That's the whole point of that. So whenever you're saying that this fine tuning has been made by God for us, that's only because we can only see it from this perspective, correct? So whenever you bring out, the other points of data, again, the only point of data that you can look at that would make sense as to whether or not this is tuned or not when it becomes to a universe is another universe. We can't make that. We can't test that. We can only observe what we have. So, I mean, the data and stuff, yes, it's very thin that where we are, as far as being here. But we are here. There's no denying that. It doesn't, just because the odds are against us if you're looking at the numbers, head on. Oh, if the Earth was closer to Venus or, closer to Mars, yes, we may not be here, or at least we may not be here in this form. Sure. But that doesn't indicate that we were, the Earth or the universe was finally tuned for that to occur. It all occurs within the laws of nature that we know of. I mean, you're even using the laws of nature to try to explain this. I mean,
yeah. So here's the thing. Couple of things. I'm not positing God in processes, but rather the explanation of why we have the processes at all. And again, so what you're doing is you're making an appeal to, basically it's this idea of an observational selection effect. And it's again, it's like, well, of course it's precise or we wouldn't be here, but that gives us no explanatory power of why metaphysically, why it should be the case. And I'm saying that intentionality to bring it about is seems a reasonable inference to the best explanation using abductive reasoning. And a good example that kind of brings this out is, and I'm sure it's this idea of the firing squad analogy. Mm-hmm. So let's say like somebody, just for the audience, somebody's condemned to death by firing squad. Okay, so they're blindfolded, they're tied up, and you have like, let's say 50 armed marksmen who all, aim their rifles right at his heart. The shots go off and the guy realizes he's not hit. So he takes his blindfold off and he says, well, of course I wasn't hit. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. But it doesn't offer any explanation as to why it should be the case. And in fact, the most reasonable inference is that it was intentful. So the puddle analogy, that's not really a very substantive critique of the fine tuning.
Well, again, I'm still trying to find where there's actual intent or proof of intent. I mean, if you're going to say it, if the law, if it comes down to an inference that there is a God and God went through this because he could, then he went to a lot of effort to do what exactly? We're on a planet that is 70% water, 7% of that is fresh, and 0.4 of that is drinkable. So that's not exactly a good start for the planet itself. Plus, our primary light source and heat source rather, causes cancer. And 99% of the rest of the universe, or even a infinitesimal amount, wants to destroy us or kills us. I mean, it's kind of a giant leap to say that all this out here
Right.
was created just so we can be here. But I mean, the other question that I asked in the opening debate was, well, you're telling me what a universe would look like if it was fine tuned. So then, could you tell me what a universe would look like if it wasn't fine tuned?
Yes. Okay. So let me hit the first objection, then I'll tell you what a universe that's not fine tuned would look like. Okay. So and this kind of comes down to a misunderstanding a lot of people have about the fine tuning. The fine tuning argument, at least the one I'm presenting, is a cumulative fine tuning case that it's for embodied moral agents to make morally relevant decisions on a moral theater. So you can think of, the ability of billions of human beings to exist on a rocky planet for a short amount of time to make morally relevant decisions. And things like the water cycle has to be exactly as it is in order for us to be here. This is even like, we need the salt in the ocean. It is going to regulate precipitation. So again, and what I'm presenting here is the increasing precision that it takes to go from things like, okay, you have these parameters that are right for a life permitting universe. Well, the precision doesn't stop there. It keeps growing into the cluster of galaxies. Has to be exactly elliptical and things of that nature. Well, it doesn't stop there either. We have to have the precise degrees of conditions we have in the solar system. So, think about Jupiter helping prevent runaway asteroid collisions to Earth, things like that. The planetary collision with Thela 4.5 billion years ago that set up our rotation axis tilt and the environment. Then we need the precise conditions on the planet that have to be right to guide the biological processes. And then we see increasing precision when we go from things like just like simple celled organisms to more complex organisms to embodied moral agents who can make morally significant decisions. And the level of complexity grows with each category. So that's a way of measuring intent. Now, as far as what a universe would look like that wasn't fine-tuned, there's a really good example of this. It's known as the matter-antimatter asymmetry problem. So in the early moments of the universe, matter and antimatter were created in almost equivalent amounts. For every billion pair of quarks to antiquarks, there was an extra quark. And it's that one extra quark that prevented the universe from devolving into pure radiation. Because when matter and antimatter hit each other, they explode into a photon. And so without that 1 to a billion asymmetry, we would have a universe of just pure radiation. That's one example that we know what the universe would look like if it were not designed. So.
Well, I mean, understanding the dark matter, the asymmetry versus antimatter versus antimatter. These are all things we don't know, though. I mean, we don't know why. These are just you're making inferences on your own to answer the why, right?
Well,
I mean, yeah. I mean, and the other thing, I mean, the backup. I don't really understand why we're concerned about the morality of the planet or the people on it whenever we're trying to figure out whether or not the Earth was fine tuned. I mean, you're kind of describing a Twilight Zone episode, where there's this kind of omnipotent being watching people, and then having them fight over the water. I mean, that sounds kind of perverse. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't sound, like the good God. I mean, if that's what I mean, I don't know if that's what you want to believe in. That's fine. I'm not trying to judge on that, but I mean, again, I mean, the data and the numbers are all fantastic, but it still doesn't prove intent. It doesn't prove that that this was a design. It's all within the parameters of nature as we know it, the laws of physics. And again, if God wanted to create, he could have created any form. It could have created any universe. There would have been, if it was for life, why isn't there more life out there? Why isn't there more signs of life? Why isn't the planet itself far more inhabitable? There would be no need to create Jupiter, as you say, to block asteroids, because then he could not make asteroids. It's just as simple as that.
Okay, so as far as why would God want to create moral agents? Well, let's go back to where I quoted from Richard Swinburne,
sure,
in his paper on the probabilities. So, if God is the ground of all morality, this is what theism postulates.
Sure.
Then somebody like Richard Swinburne would say it's moderately probable that he would create human beings, and so human bodies. But laws of nature have to be very precise if they are to allow for the evolution of human bodies. So the evidence of the existence of human bodies would add to the probability of theism over naturalism. So it's this idea that, God would, it would be predicted that he would likely or moderately want to create embodied moral agents like himself, or moral agents like themselves. And so laws of physics have to be very precise if they are to bring about the existence of bodies for moral agents. And lo and behold, that's exactly the parameters of the universe are precise that we would develop human bodies. And so it would be a prediction under theism of why God would want to do it. And here's the other thing is that atheism is not a default hypothesis. These are grand metaphysical theories to explain ultimate reality. And I'm saying that theism would be an inference to the best explanation based on its theoretical virtues. So it's simple. And not only that, it would further unify other points of data, like the fact that, our universe is describable with mathematical terms, that we have conscious agents who have the principles of reason and so forth. So it's going to offer unification, explanatory power, things of that nature. And so we kind of need a competing explanation or hypothesis that would better explain the data. That's why I'm laying out the categories and using principles from the philosophy of science to make an inference to the best explanation.
Okay. Wow. I'm sorry. We got to back up because the idea, the notion, again, I'm not trying not to harp on something, but if we're still stuck on this whole morality idea, I don't understand if you're trying to say that the earth was fine tuned, and then now we're going to go to, well, God obviously would want to create moral sentient beings like himself. Well, at what point did we determine that there was a God, and at what point did we determine that he was a sentient being like we are?
Okay.
You know what I mean? So we're kind of working backwards here.
Well, okay. So
and again, just let me finish my thought, please. And again, if he is a moral being, why on earth did he create the earth the way he did? Why did he create us the way he did? I mean, again, cancer. The sun has freaking gives us freaking cancer. The water issues. I mean, the parasites. It's interesting that we're combining evolution and creation at the same time. It's a kind of an odd argument. I'll admit that. But it seems like we're pigeonholing a lot of different things into one jar, and it just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. So
okay, so again, I'm making a very modest claim. I'm not making a deductive argument saying therefore God exists, therefore God did this. I'm laying out the data points of the increasing teleological precision with each category, and I'm saying that theism would explain the data. It would offer a simple unifying explanation of the data, and so it gives us abductive, plausible reason to conclude theism is true. In other words, these conditions would be more in a more expected matter of course, given something like theism, than it would metaphysical naturalism. And when we get into things like natural evils, so that's a different argument altogether. But just briefly, like let's say animal predation. Well, you'll notice, the laws are precise such that we have functioning ecosystems, predator to prey relationships. Parasites are necessary for that. We have things like hurricanes that are disastrous yet regulate precipitation. The sunlight can cause cancer, but it's also what allows us to survive and thrive. So again, the fine-tuning argument is not that we should be able to optimally exist on the planet or in space or anything of that nature. It's a more modest claim that these conditions are right for embodied moral agents to make morally significant decisions on a rocky planet.
Again, you lose me when you reintroduce the moral agency, because that you're saying that's why all this is here, and that just seems to lose it, because it if what you're saying is this was all created so that human beings can come up and be moral agents, which again, we gotta skip the fact or the idea that creation versus evolution. So if God really wanted Homo sapiens, why didn't he go straight to Homo sapiens? We'll go past that, I guess. But you're saying that this is the best explanation. Well, the explanation's already there. It's the data you just started in the beginning as to how the planets were made, at what degree we are for life, how these things occur. That itself is the explanation, or at least the best explanation we have. It's not as to why. It's because from what we know, or what we're able to know, and again, it's okay to say we don't know. There's so much we don't know, right?
Right.
What we do know, or at least able to observe, is that where this occurred or how it occurred to a point. But you're still making leaps to say that these things happened, or it only makes sense if there was a designer. And I just don't see it. I'm sorry. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, because you still, at the end of the day, if you're saying it's a designer and if it's based on some sort of morality, then that's doubly is wrong. I mean, so what's the end game here? What's the purpose? Why did he go thousands of years of creating other beings? Why is there extinction of different beings every day? Or why did we have to go through thousands of years of evolution and not just be Homo sapiens from day one? At what point are we going to know our point of being here? And again, I don't understand where the whole morality plays involved. If again we're just in some sort of weird, like the 5 Men in a Bucket episode of Twilight Zone, where they're just all being observed for hours on end by a malevolent being to see how they respond. I mean, is that I mean, what
okay,
playing out, man?
Yeah, right. Okay, so here's the thing. When it comes to like creation, evolution,
Sure.
I hold aspects of evolutionary creationism, kind of like process structuralism, and then I do hold also aspects of old Earth creationism. In other words, that perhaps God seeing inherent value in life, intervenes at various points. But that's the conversation I would have with a fellow theist, like somebody like let's say me and Caleb are talking about Genesis or something like that. Then I'd be like, hey, I kind of see it this way. But as far as someone that doesn't hold that view, so I just grant, for the sake of conversation, naturalism in its entirety. So that's where I'm going with that. And as far as as far as morality, or embodied moral agents, let me ask you this. Maybe we can kind of switch it up. Do you think something like the existence of creatures who are consciously self-aware, can understand the universe, do science and things of that nature, and make important decisions, morally relevant decisions? Okay, so let's say we have to explain that, and you have two competing explanations. Do you think embodied moral agents would be a more expected matter of course on metaphysical naturalism, or on something akin to theism?
Oh, geez, that's a completely different subject, man. I mean,
it's the argument
okay.
It's so okay. Here's
Can I try to simplify it just a little bit? I think what Travis is saying is that there's these two hypotheses that are on the table, right? And you're like, well, how do we even get this one hypothesis at all, right? And Travis is like, well, it exists. It's been around for a long time. So, and it's kind of more simple than this, but you're like, well, still, how do we get there? How do we even get to that? And then why, if it's the case, are all these other things coming into play, like the cancer of, the sun giving cancer, water issues, and this and that. Like, I think you're at the point, Seamus, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
Like, why is God even a hypothesis? And that's the question I would ask you in return, would be like, why couldn't it be?
Well, the thing is, you're saying,
is that right though, guys? Am I
a little bit? So the thing is, because I think, and maybe I'm taking Travis's arguments wrong, but if you just look at, if we're just talking about the fine tuning argument, the issues of morality and sentient beings on Earth and all that, that it doesn't need to be played out even. That's a whole can of worms. Just because we have X doesn't mean A caused it, or that A is a product of it, or I'm sorry, that X is a product of A, right? If you follow my nonsense there, just because the universe is doesn't mean it was for the purpose of creating sentient beings, of creating moral beings, Homo sapiens. There's no evidence of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I do actually have some note. If we want to get into the argument from natural evil, I do have some notes on my thoughts on that. But just briefly, okay. So you'll know it's regular laws and processes occurring in regular ways that allows us to make morally relevant decisions. Okay. So let me use a practical example here. Like, let's say, I have the choice of right from wrong on whether or not to stab somebody. Well, if I was to go to stab somebody and the physics were such that every time I tried to stab somebody, like the knife turned into butter, that's usually an example that's using. Well, my moral choice would have no real significance or consequence. So it's in this type of environment where we can form justified true beliefs and have epistemic knowledge and grounding of morally relevant decisions. And then to kind of come back to this issue of morality, what I'm saying is that the complexity in the cosmos, the cluster of galaxies, the planetary system, planet, life on the planet surface, and all these different factors increase with complexity. And that's a way to measure. In other words, it's more precise. So we have more precision that would go into like the evolution of embodied moral agents, then would go into the formation of, like, let's say a supernova, a black hole, or even like, the production of simple celled organisms and everything. What I'm saying is there's more complexity and precision that goes into moral agents, and we have that type of environment. And so then going back to using philosophy of science, I'm using it as an inference to the best explanation. These are competing hypotheses to explain ultimate reality. If that makes sense.
It does and it does not. Because again, I don't know why we're debating about the arguments against evil or morality whenever it just doesn't have anything. You still have to prove that the universe is fine-tuned before you even get there. And again,
that's why I laid out the data points and showed how the increasing precision grows. Like, another, it's kind of like cumulative. Like, you have all these conditions that are necessary for a life permitting universe. So that's going to be what builds up a lot of these heavy elements that become the periodic table of elements that form life chemistry. And it's what it forms stars, rocky planets, galaxies, things like that. Okay, so you have a precise set of conditions for that, and then with the life forms, you have increasing complexity that with each one. And so that increasing complexity is a way I'm saying, well, hey, look, this, it would be this increased precision is also a way we could measure intent. And then,
again, you're getting to that there's precision in it, that
yes,
it infers that there was an actual design instead of just a reaction or a reaction to the laws of physics itself, right? I mean, to change in the planets, a change in the seasons, and so forth over time, to the laws of nature, as opposed to just this. As you're saying, you're kind of describing it as some sort of wheeled design, and that's just we're still not there.
No, what I'm saying is these conditions have to be precise, and that's why I laid out various data points highlighting that fact, and that we need more, these conditions that have to be precise increase with the complexity of successive categories, which is another way you could measure intent or, increased precision. And so, and again, I have to keep coming back to this. I'm not, making a deductive argument. I'm making a modest abductive argument that, hey, given the nature of this data, it would seem a more expected matter, of course, given something like theism. So I'm not saying it proves God. I'm not,
what? Expected on what, though? Again, we
on the
only have one example of what a universe is and what a universe became.
right.
We don't have the other data to roll the dice again, if you will, to see where we end up, to see if there is instead of 9 planets in this particular galaxy, whether or not this galaxy even exists, whether or not that there is life on Earth or there is an Earth. We don't have that luxury. We only have the one example, and that doesn't indicate anything other than what we have from the the observations through nature and the laws of physics.
Right. So we're kind of at a point where we're starting to repeat each other or repeat ourselves. I've answered this by saying that, that's why I'm looking at the increasing precision that it takes to go from things like just a life permitting universe. Well, we didn't have to have a precisely elliptical cluster of galaxies. We didn't have to have the precise degree that we have in the planetary system. So I'm laying out
and we didn't have to have Jupiter, and we didn't have to have the sun, and we didn't have to have a lot of things to create life. Right. So,
And
again, if there was a design, it's still not a very. I mean, yeah, sure, precision, but is the precision really that precise? If there is a agent behind all this, why is it still incredibly flawed? Especially whenever you're wanting to introduce that it's some sort of moral sentient being that has to reproduce something just like him. And why did it take him so many times to get it right? I mean,
yeah. So my mic is okay. So again, coming back to this, so like I was saying, you have this, precision and everything, and then when it comes to life, that's why I did successive categories 1 through 4, and the precision increases with each category, and the conditions for the 4th category. You'll recall I said that any alleged hostility of conditions in the universe are in fact used in the production of the 4th category, and so that's where I was getting into. Natural laws occurring in regular ways are necessary for moral agents to make morally relevant decisions and know the consequences and effects of their moral choices and everything. So I have addressed that. And
is a deer moral? Does a deer have morality?
No.
Okay, so if a deer makes a choice to know where to lay at night to keep away from predators, isn't that the same thing that you're inferring, or that they know where to get their source of water or not to get their source of water? I mean, it's part of nature. It's part of evolution. It's part of what we've been observing, right? People, animals adapt to the planet. They adapt to the environment around them.
I would actually challenge that. I'm actually going to challenge that because it's kind of like my friend Dr. Zachary Arden will say that the naturalist doesn't really get evolution for free. Like, you don't hypothesize naturalism and automatically get evolution, because you need an extreme degree of fine tuning for, like, let's just say that we have the origin of life naturally. Okay, so you have these simple celled organisms. Well, they do not have to causally unfold the way that they did to bring about this evolutionary process, and it would be quite surprising that in fact they did. So you even need fine tuning in biochemical systems for evolution to go off, and then that's where that would get into ideas of the local fine tuning. In other words, environmental constraints sort of guide the evolutionary process along. So the theist could just appeal to, like, the planet being fine tuned. And that it guides the evolutionary process in a way
that's far from fine tuned. I mean,
I don't
know where you're getting that at.
It's okay. So what it is, it's fine tuned to bring about embodied moral agents who can make morally relevant decisions. Okay.
Again, that's where you're going off the deep end with me on that. I mean, that's That's like the Oscar or Wilde quote, where a blind man looking into a black room for a black cat that isn't there and finding it. I mean, you're saying that this was all because of moral agency that needed to occur because there was a moral agent that wanted to produce moral agents like himself, and it just, or herself or theirself. It just, you're got a long way to get there, man. I mean, we haven't even come down to why the planet is what it is. If you're going to say that, I'm sorry.
Yes. So again, that's why, I'm appealing to the philosophy of science and looking at the increasing teleological precision of successive categories 1 through 4, and that the conditions required for the category 4 are extreme at all levels of cosmic structure, laws of physics, universe as a whole, cluster of galaxies, planetary system, planet, moon, surface of the planet, and life on the planet's surface. Has to be precise for the production of the 4th category. And so I'm making an inference to the best explanation to explain the data, why the data is such that it is. And again, you don't get metaphysical naturalism or atheism for free. These are competing explanations. And I think I'm putting a pretty simple unifying explanation out there of why we have the given data that we do.
Whenever you end it with it, it's because, or it's all for the purpose of creating a moral sentient being that needed to represent a moral sentient being that created all this. That's where it's. I mean, not saying that there isn't issues before that, but that's where you definitely lose me.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I think you guys are at that point where you've hit heads enough. You're beating the dead horse enough there. But yeah, we're running up on an hour too. So we're just gonna. I think it would be wise.
We're gonna do closings.
We're gonna do some quick closings, maybe 3 minutes tops or 5 minutes tops, depending on however long you want. But yeah, so I think that we're at that point, and then if anybody else in the audience wants to ask a question, I'll post it up.
Okay. So I guess I'll go and do my closing. Caleb?
I'll ask Seamus if he wants, because typically the affirmative, because you had the first word, he would get the last word. But
okay. If he wants to go first, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, that's fine.
Usually like Sunday morning. So.
Okay, so great discussion. Always love having these discussions. I love science, love philosophy of science, and kind of discussing these issues. And so the argument that was presented is that I'm taking the hypothesis of theism to explain the state of data, and basically it's like an inference to the best explanation of why we have the precise conditions for a life permitting universe, why that precision keeps growing into the cluster of galaxies, why they're exactly elliptical to bring about the production of the just right amounts of heavy elements that are going to form life chemistry. Then the precise conditions within the solar system, like the planetary collision with Theia that formed our moon and transformed the atmosphere, making it hospitable for simple life, and then how that complexity grows into more complex life, and then with that data as sort of a backdrop, we look at the increasing precision that goes from things like just simple celled life that survives for 90 days or less. That precision increases with advanced bacteria that can survive for up to 3 billion years. And then the precision keeps growing when we look at various plants and animals, and then the precision is at its highest when it comes to consciously self-aware embodied moral agents who can even use their intelligence and capacity to form a high-tech global civilization out of the biodeposits that have built up over the last 4.1 to 3.8 billion years. And so, we have this various data of categories 1 through 4 that exists. And so I'm saying theism would explain it. It would offer a better explanation than metaphysical naturalism. And we didn't really hear any reason why metaphysical naturalism or atheism should be the preferred hypothesis. And so I think we have a pretty good abductive argument out there. And again, abduction is just it's just a matter of plausibility. It's not deductive proof. It's not even inductive probability. It's abductive plausibility. That given this data, it would be more plausibly expected under theism than naturalism. And so, other than that, yeah, enjoyed the conversation.
Go ahead, Seamus. You're up, bud.
I hit the wrong button. Okay. Before I get into anything else, of course, thanks to all of you guys for having me on. This is a lot of fun. It's always fun to have discussions. I would also implore anybody that's watching now, live or later, to never take anything that's said in the debate as gospel. Always Google, do your own research, and make sure that you can form your own opinions. I wasn't looking to make a counterclaim, so to speak, or to come up with or put forth a hypothesis to explain the argument against, more so that we can only look at what we have. We can only know what we know. I think we get into problems whenever we try to fill gaps that aren't there, or fill gaps with answers that aren't there. I think a lot of these claims of fine tuning and creation comes down to the God of the gaps, which has been what we've been doing as beings for beginning of time. Once upon a time, we used to think that the Earth was the center of the universe, and many people were tortured and murdered for saying otherwise. A lot of people used to say gravity wasn't a real thing. Now we know it, and we can actually, in some ways, measure it, which is kind of funny that now that's being used as an argument for theism. So again, we don't even know how much we don't know, and I would rather at the end of the day say, I don't really know. I only know what information that I have so far. I'm not going to make a leap to make a claim, an unsubstantiated assertion, to try to explain away something that I just don't know or currently don't have the ability to understand. So,
right on. And Seamus, give us another shameless plug to your stuff here.
Yep. Again, the show is the Free Thought Profit podcast. We try to record every Sunday, usually post every Friday. Within a month from now, roughly give or take, we're going to go to live shows on Friday. So that'll be the big change. We're coming around episode 300. We've actually done more than 300, but the official count, so to speak, is coming up pretty soon. So
got a big show for it, huh?
Yeah, big guest, somebody we've been trying to talk to for a long time. So
let me guess, Delahunty. No, I'm just joking. I don't want to ruin your.
No. The chances of me and Matt Delahunty speaking nice to each other are probably not good. So yeah.
Well, Caleb here did a debate against Delahunty.
Nice.
You don't need to rub it in that he hasn't. He might get the chance eventually.
Right on. Well, guys, that's the end of the show. We thank you so much for being here. Caleb and Travis stay on just for a little bit after the show. Other than that, folks, we enjoyed our time here. I didn't get any questions really, so I'm not going to throw anything out there, but have a good day and we will see you next time.